1962 Volkswagen Beetle. An enduring symbol of simplicity, charm, and timeless design. The early 1960s Volkswagen Beetle embodies everything that made the people's car a global icon. Simple engineering, approachable charm, and enduring reliability. This 1962 example, finished in classic white over a black interior and showing only 32,436 miles, represents not just a car but a snapshot of an era when automotive design was shifting rapidly, yet Volkswagen's formula of practicality and charm remained unchanged. With its original style 1,192 cubic centimeters air-cooled flat-four paired to a 4-speed manual transmission, this Beetle continues to carry the DNA that made it a household name across continents. For enthusiasts seeking an authentic early Type 1 that blends preservation with usability, few cars encapsulate the period character of the Beetle as faithfully as this example. The historical backdrop. By 1962, the Beetle was well into its second decade of production and had already become a phenomenon across Europe and the United States. Originally designed in the 1930s to be Germany's people's car, the Beetle survived the upheavals of World War II and went on to become one of the most significant automobiles of the 20th century. The early 60s were particularly important for Volkswagen. While American automakers were producing chrome-laden cruisers with V8 power, Volkswagen stuck to its formula. A compact, efficient, air-cooled rear-engine car that offered unbeatable reliability and affordability. The Beetle's popularity was not just about transport. It was about identity. To drive a Beetle in 1962 was to make a statement. You valued simplicity, efficiency, and durability over ostentation. In a way, it became the car of the people not just in Germany but worldwide. From college students in California to families in Europe, the Beetle offered a unifying sense of practicality and charm that few cars could match. Exterior. Recognizable at a glance. The 1962 Beetle retained the core design elements that made the Type 1 instantly recognizable. Its white paintwork enhances the gentle curves of the body, while bright chrome accents on the bumpers, headlight bezels, and door handles add just enough sparkle to elevate its understated form. The signature rounded fenders, bulbous engine lid, and upright stance speak to the Beetle's design continuity, while the small oval taillights and thin chrome trim reflect an era before US-mandated safety changes began reshaping the car's look later in the decade. The simple steel wheels, painted to complement the body and capped with Volkswagen's minimalist hubcaps, emphasize the utilitarian philosophy behind the design. Unlike many of its contemporaries, which pursued flamboyant styling and yearly redesigns, the Beetle remained timeless by sticking with what worked. That restraint is exactly why its design endures today, as instantly recognizable and beloved as it was over 60 years ago. Interior. Honest, utilitarian, and inviting. Inside, the 1962 Beetle offers an environment that reflects the German philosophy of function over flash. The black interior is modest but welcoming, with new carpeting that refreshes the cabin while retaining a period-correct feel. At the center, the Wolfsburg crest steering wheel serves as a reminder of the car's heritage, directly connecting the driver to Volkswagen's roots. There are no frills here, no excessive chrome or complicated controls. Instead, the dashboard is clean and functional, dominated by a large speedometer flanked by basic switches and knobs. The seats, simple in design, provide adequate comfort for short trips and long drives alike. For generations of owners, the Beetle's cabin became a second home, its inviting simplicity a perfect canvas for personalization, from hanging trinkets on the rearview mirror to filling the glove box with road maps and memories. The engine. Modest but dependable. Power comes from the classic 1,192 cubic centimeters air-cooled flat-four engine, one of the most durable power plants in automotive history. Fed by a Solex 28-picked single-barrel carburetor, the motor produces a modest output, but numbers were never the Beetle's selling point. What mattered was reliability, ease of maintenance, and a unique driving character that only an air-cooled Volkswagen could provide. Paired to a 4-speed manual transmission, the engine delivers power to the rear wheels with a satisfying mechanical engagement. The drivetrain's simplicity has made it legendary among mechanics and enthusiasts alike. With basic tools and a bit of know-how, almost anyone could service and repair a Beetle. This ease of ownership is a large part of why so many survived the decades, becoming beloved classics today. When on the road, the Beetle hums with a distinct air-cooled sound, an acoustic signature that generations of enthusiasts can recognize from a distance. Lightweight construction and rear-wheel drive make for an approachable driving experience. Never fast, but always enjoyable. Whether weaving through city streets or cruising on a weekend outing, the Beetle proves that driving pleasure is not measured in horsepower, but in character. Driving impressions, engaging in its own way. To drive a 1962 Beetle today is to step back in time. The steering is light, the gearbox direct, and the ride surprisingly compliant for such a small car. With its compact dimensions, it slips effortlessly into tight city streets or narrow European lanes, exactly as it was intended to do. Acceleration is leisurely by modern standards, but the Beetle compensates with involvement. Every shift, every turn, every press of the pedal connects driver to machine in a way that modern cars often lack. The modest performance encourages relaxed driving, reminding us that sometimes the journey truly matters more than the destination. For many owners, that philosophy was what made the Beetle more than just transportation. It was a way of life. Cultural impact and collectability. The 1962 Volkswagen Beetle occupies a sweet spot in the model's history. It predates the larger safety features and emissions regulations that began altering the design in later years, while still benefiting from incremental improvements made since the 1950s. Collectors often favor these early 1960s models for their purity of form, mechanical simplicity, and undeniable charm. Culturally, the Beetle went on to define an era. It became synonymous with the counterculture movement of the 1960s and 70s, embraced by free spirits who valued its affordability and quirkiness. It starred in films, most famously Disney's Herbie series, and appeared in countless advertisements that leaned into its honesty and humility. Unlike many cars, which fade into obscurity after production ends, the Beetle remained a living, breathing icon. This particular 1962 Volkswagen Beetle, finished in white with a black interior and showing just over 32,000 miles, is a reminder of why the model remains so beloved. Its preservation of original character, from the Wolfsburg steering wheel to its faithful 1.2-liter engine, offers a direct link to a pivotal chapter in automotive history. More than 6 decades later, the Beetle's appeal endures. It may not be the fastest car on the road, but few vehicles can claim its cultural significance, universal recognition, or sheer likability. To own a Beetle like this is not just to own a classic car. It is to hold a piece of automotive history, a car that truly lived up to its promise of being the people's car. Global production and legacy. By 1962, Volkswagen was producing Beetles at a pace that stunned the global automotive industry. What began as a modest post-war recovery project in Wolfsburg quickly evolved into an international enterprise. Production facilities were established not only in Germany but also in Brazil, Mexico, Australia, and South Africa. Each plant contributed to making the Beetle a truly global car, adapted to regional markets but always recognizable as the same faithful Type 1. In Brazil, Beetle production began in 1959, and by the 1960s, it had already become the country's most beloved car, affectionately known as the Fusca. In Mexico, where production would continue until 2003, the Beetle became a national icon, a fixture on city streets and rural roads alike. No matter the continent, the formula was the same: durability, affordability, and a design that transcended generations. This worldwide production not only allowed Volkswagen to dominate markets that were traditionally resistant to imported cars, but it also gave the Beetle a cultural identity in every region it touched. While Detroit was selling horsepower and luxury, Volkswagen was selling dependability and charm, and millions responded. To fully appreciate the 1962 Beetle, one must understand the landscape of small cars in the early 1960s. Across Europe, the Beetle faced competition from the Fiat 500 in Italy, the Renault 4 in France, and the Morris Mini in the United Kingdom. Each offered a unique interpretation of what a people's car should be. The Fiat 500 was smaller, cheaper, and perfectly suited to Italy's narrow streets but lacked the robustness of the Beetle's air-cooled engine. The Renault 4 was practical with its hatchback design, but it didn't carry the same timeless styling or mechanical simplicity. The Mini, of course, became an icon in its own right thanks to its revolutionary transverse engine and go-kart handling, but it was also more complex to service. Against these competitors, the Beetle stood out not because it was the most advanced, but because it was the most approachable. Its rear-engine layout, air-cooled simplicity, and unwavering reliability made it a car that could thrive in conditions that would challenge its rivals. Whether it was the icy winters of Scandinavia, the deserts of Mexico, or the bustling freeways of California, the Beetle performed. One of the Beetle's enduring strengths is its serviceability. In the early 1960s, Volkswagen promoted the Beetle as a car anyone could maintain, with advertising slogans that highlighted its simplicity and honesty. For many first-time owners, learning how to adjust valves, replace spark plugs, or tune a carburetor became part of the Beetle experience. Today, that same philosophy makes the Beetle a favorite among restorers. Parts availability is remarkable thanks to decades of aftermarket support and reproduction components. Whether you are seeking an original Solex carburetor, Wolfsburg trim pieces, or even full replacement body panels, the Beetle community provides unrivaled support. Restoration approaches vary. Some enthusiasts aim for Concours-level originality, preserving every detail as it left the factory, while others embrace subtle upgrades like disc brakes, modern carburetors, or improved suspension for everyday usability. The 1962 model strikes a particularly attractive balance. It retains the early Beetle purity without being as fragile or hard to source parts for as the earliest split-window or oval window models. Few cars in history have left as strong a mark on popular culture as the Volkswagen Beetle. By the early 1960s, it had already appeared in countless print advertisements that played up its honesty with witty, minimalist designs. Campaigns like "Think Small" and "It's ugly but it gets you there" became advertising legends, flipping traditional car marketing on its head. Then came Hollywood. Disney's The Love Bug, released in 1968, turned the Beetle into a film star. Herbie, the white Beetle with racing stripes and a personality of its own, introduced millions of children and families to the idea that a car could be a friend, not just a machine. Even those who had never driven a Beetle felt a sense of connection to it. Musicians and artists also embraced the car. From the Beatles posing with them in photo shoots to counterculture road trips in the US, the Beetle became a rolling symbol of freedom, simplicity, and nonconformity. No matter where you turned in the 1960s and 70s, on the street, in films, on album covers, the Beetle was present. In the modern collector car world, the 1962 Beetle occupies a unique place. While later Beetles remain accessible as entry-level classics, the earlier pre-1967 cars are increasingly sought after for their purity of design and vintage details. The smaller taillights, thin bumpers, and simple dashboards of these early cars carry a level of authenticity that later models, with their safety updates and design changes, cannot replicate. Values for well-preserved examples have steadily risen in recent years. Cars like this 1962 Beetle, showing originality and careful upkeep, are particularly desirable because they offer both drivability and historic character. Unlike many collector cars, Beetles are still approachable, affordable enough for new enthusiasts, yet significant enough to attract seasoned collectors. Beyond value, owning a Beetle offers something more intangible: a connection to a shared global story. Few cars have touched as many lives across so many countries, and fewer still remain as loved today as they were 6 decades ago. The 1962 Volkswagen Beetle is more than just a car. It is a cultural artifact, a machine that defined mobility for an entire generation. Its design, mechanical honesty, and cultural impact combine to make it one of the most important automobiles ever produced. This particular example, finished in classic white with a black interior and showing just over 32,000 miles, captures the essence of what made the Beetle beloved worldwide. Driving it today is not about speed or performance, it's about connection, to history, to simplicity, and to the millions of people who found freedom behind the wheel of a Beetle. In an age of constant innovation and disposable technology, the Beetle stands as a reminder that true greatness lies not in complexity, but in timeless simplicity.